You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's going on, Chiefs Kingdom? I'm DJ Kissel. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of 10 Things presented by our friends at KC Strength and Conditioning. If you know somebody who needs baseball or softball training, ages 8 to 18 in the Kansas City area, call my friend John Renzi at 913-638-8960. That's KC Strength and Conditioning. They've sent hundreds of players to college and to the pros and getting drafted. They know what they're doing, and they will treat you the right way. Again, that's KC Strength and Conditioning. Now, this show, 10 Things, is all about information. It's about stats. It's about records, paces, nuggets, and fun things to help you look smarter to your friends when you're all sitting around talking about the Chiefs. Now, a lot of these things are going to sway towards the positives, just FYI. We've got a lot of analysis, a lot of thoughts on our other shows here at KC Sports Network. This show is more about hard information. And with that said, here are 10 things that stood out from Saturday's win over the Seahawks to help you become a smarter Chiefs fan. And once again, our attempt to not normalize the greatness that we're watching in what is undoubtedly and without question the golden age of Chiefs football. It's never been better. Here's more context to prove it. One quick thing first, if I sound kind of goofy, I'm just getting over a stomach virus that wiped my family out over the past week. We all got it kind of in succession, and I'm the one who got it last, going on Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day. And so if anybody out there has caught it or whatever, just make sure washing your hands, taking care of yourselves. We did all that, did not matter. But if you wonder why I look and or sound a little off, that's why it's the first day I've been upright in a while. So please bear with me. Hopefully talking through these things will make myself feel a little bit better as well. But again, appreciate you all for hanging out and spending part of your day with us. All right, number one on the 10 things, actually 15 things. They do too much good stuff. I can't condense it down to 10, and I want to cut things out. So number one, take a bow if you were out there on Saturday at Arrowhead. Kickoff temperature of 12 degrees was the fifth coldest game at Arrowhead since 1994. And the wind chill on Saturday at kickoff was -4 degrees, which was also the fifth coldest wind chill at kickoff at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium since 1994. That's one of those games where, as Chiefs fans, you earn your fan card by going out to that game and participating in what was a pretty good win for the Chiefs, beating the Seahawks there and picking up their 12th win of the season. My son and I were actually going to go out to that game. He was just getting over the sickness. I was just getting it. We were trying to suck it up, both of us, and get out there. And he said, "I don't know if I want to do this, Dad. It's going to be freezing, and I'm not feeling great yet." And I started to feel pretty bad and good, because by kickoff, I was not watching the game. I'll say that much, but was able to watch some of it horizontally while I was laying in bed. But and again, shout out to anybody who out there who made it to the game. Again, the fifth coldest game in Arrowhead Stadium, or at Arrowhead Stadium, since 1994, both with the kickoff temperature and with the wind chill. All right, number two, Chiefs with that victory, 24-10 over the Seahawks, picked up their 12th win of the season, and it's their fifth consecutive season with at least 12 victories, moving into sole possession of the third longest streak of 12-win seasons in NFL history. Only the Colts, who had 7 between 2003 and 2009, and the New England Patriots, who had 8 between 2010 and 2017, own longer streaks. So again, golden age of Chiefs football. There's another one right there. Third longest streak of 12-win seasons right there at 5, and barring any injuries, would not expect that to slow down or have any reason to believe, with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and company in charge, that the Chiefs will not pick up 12-win seasons moving forward. But let's enjoy the here and now right now as we move on to number 3. That is that the Chiefs completed another NFC sweep. This is a pretty good nugget. And a lot of these are from Chiefs PR and their game notes. So appreciate all the work that the Chiefs communication staff does to put these stats and these records and all this information together. With the victory on Saturday over the Seahawks, the Chiefs completed a sweep of the NFC West in 2022, going 4-0 against the Cardinals, 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks. It marks the third consecutive season that the Chiefs have swept its NFC divisional opponents. It was the NFC South in 2020, the NFC East in 2021, and obviously the NFC West here in 2022. And with the introduction of the 17th game in 2021 and it being an interconference matchup, Green Bay in 2021 and Tampa Bay in 2022, The Chiefs have now won 16 consecutive NFC matchups, dating back to the Chiefs' 26-23 victory against the Minnesota Vikings on November 3rd, 2019. I'll always remember that game for Harrison Butker nailing, I believe it was the end of regulation, that game-tying field goal from like 50 yards. It was freezing. It was windy. I was on the sideline for that game. Unbelievable game. I'll always remember that one. And I believe that was the Matt Moore game as well, when Patrick Mahomes was dealing with the kneecap issue. But since the start of the 2018 season, when Mahomes became the starter, the Chiefs are 19-3 against NFC teams in the regular season. The Chiefs also went 4-0 against the NFC East in 2013. That was Andy Reid's first year leading the Chiefs franchise, and it marks the 9th time since 1990 that the Chiefs have swept all of their NFC opponents in a season. Again, 16 straight wins against the NFC in the regular season. That's pretty special. All right, moving on to number 4. Here begins the Patrick Mahomes section of our show that will last the next 10 or 15 minutes or however long this takes to get through. I'll repeat a lot of these things because they are bonkers. Mahomes moves up season passing chart. With 224 yards in Saturday's game passing, Patrick Mahomes now has 4,720 passing yards this season, which is first in the NFL and ranking as 4th most in franchise history. His 4,720 passing yards lead the NFL in 2022, and he now owns the top 4 marks in franchise history for most passing yards in a single season. He needs 378 passing yards over the next 2 games to pass his own single season franchise record of 5,097 passing yards from the 2018 season, where he threw 55 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. Unbelievable. One of the best seasons in NFL history for a quarterback, rivaling Peyton Manning's, I believe, 2013 season for the Broncos. But combined with his 4,839 passing yards from last year, he now ranks 2nd in franchise history for most passing yards in consecutive seasons with 9,559. He needs 21 passing yards to break the previous mark of 9,579 yards set over the 2020-2021 season. Basically, Patrick Mahomes breaking all of his own records in franchise history at 27 years old. So again, if you look, and I'm looking at it visually, but if you look at the top 5 passing yard seasons in franchise history, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all Patrick Mahomes. The 4th is where he's at right now with 2 regular season games to go. And again, 378 yards on average over the next 2 weeks to break that record of 5,097. That could be a stretch, but getting to 2nd place is very much within reach. He needs 100, and let me do some quick math, but 120 yards passing over the next 2 weeks to move into 2nd place with the most passing yards in a single season in franchise history. And shout out Trent Green for being on this list at 4,591 passing yards back in 2004. And again, most passing yards in consecutive seasons, a bunch of Patrick Mahomes, and then Trent Green from 2004 to 2005, since they're in 5th place with 8,630. Number 5, also Patrick Mahomes. With 2 touchdown passes in Saturday's game, Mahomes moves into a tie for 3rd place for the most touchdown passes in a single season in franchise history with 37. He now owns the top 4 marks in franchise history, just like he did with passing yards, although this one, it's not Trent Green, it's Lenny Dawson, the late, great Lenny Dawson. 2 more touchdown passes this year will move Mahomes into sole possession of 2nd place for most touchdown passes in a single season. His 2-year total of 74 touchdown passes between 2021 and this season in 2022 now sits as the 3rd most in franchise history. He needs 3 more touchdown passes to break his franchise record of 76 touchdown passes set over the 2018-2019 season. I'm going to keep explaining this stuff, folks, and it's kind of a tongue twister because it's basically just Patrick Mahomes breaking all of his own records. And again, we don't want to normalize this stuff. Don't want to blow past it because it is bonkers. At 27 years old, he's breaking all these records. And I don't know if it's sad because we all knew that it had been over 30 years or more than 30 years since the Chiefs had drafted their own quarterback who'd even won a football game for them. So didn't have a lot of, when you look at these career records, didn't have quarterbacks that were here for a number of years to be able to set these kinds of records. We had Trent Green, who was here for part of his career. Even Len Dawson was here for part of his career. And then going back to Joe Montana and Elvis Gerbach and all the guys that we grew up, at least guys that are around my age, grew up watching. They weren't here. Rich Gannon, they weren't here for all that many years. Alex Smith was here for part of his career, but again, not normalizing what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes. Absolutely bonkers. Top 4 seasons in franchise history in passing yards are Patrick Mahomes. Top 4 seasons in touchdown passes are Patrick Mahomes. He would need 13 touchdown passes over the next 2 weeks to tie the record of 50. Excuse me, it wasn't 55. It was 50 touchdown passes back in 2018. So 2 more. We'll put him at 39, and that will be good for second place. Not bad for what many called what was going to be a bounce back season or kind of a down season, losing that receiver that went off to Miami that fans are tired of us talking about, but it just makes it more special and talking about the context of what he has done this year. Because not to diminish, I know some people have done that, not to diminish what Tyreek Hill has been and who he is as a player, being one of the 2 or 3 best wide receivers in the NFL. That should not be disputed. But the fact that Patrick Mahomes is having just as good a seasons as we've seen from him throughout his years as a starter in Kansas City without one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now just goes to show and add more context to how special Patrick Mahomes really is as a player. And I said it all off season. And again, I wasn't the only one, people that have been around him. His mental acuity of playing the position was always going to be on display this season because he's so much smarter than I think he was getting credit for. Not that a lot of people didn't think he was smart, but you get caught up in the highlights and all of those crazy plays that he makes that he never got enough credit for his ability to read a defense, know where to go with the football, when to tuck it, when to run, his feel for the pocket. All of those things we're at such an elite level, but again, easy not to talk about when you just want to see him throwing left-handed passes or, running to the sideline, throwing back across his body, across the middle, which you're always told not to do as a quarterback. And yet he does it and it works, and it's worked so many times. You're like, you know what, you got to rewrite what the rules are when you're talking about quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. All right, number 6, also Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes moves up in completions and attempts charts. With 16 completions on Saturday, Mahomes has now recorded a total of 388 completions on the season. This is the 3rd most in franchise history, and Mahomes now owns the top 4 marks for completions in a season. Completions, yards, touchdowns. His total over the past 2 years is 824 completions, which is the 2nd most passes completed in consecutive seasons in franchise history. Trailing, only you guessed it, Patrick Mahomes from the 2021 season, the 2020 season, 2022 season, and the 2018 season in succession. And then again, Trent Green at number 5 with 369 completed passes back in 2004. All right, number 7, one of the last 2, I believe, for Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, 2 more Patrick Mahomes nuggets here. Number 7, this one's probably the coolest one on here. And again, thank you all for hanging out and spending part of your day and trying to write down some of these nuggets or remember as many as you can. I'll try to slow down on some of these. Mahomes joins elite company. Patrick Mahomes now owns 37 touchdown passes and 4,720 passing yards in 2022. Just went through all what that meant. But those 2 things combined makes it his 4th season of at least 35 touchdown throws and at least 4,500 passing yards in his career. He joins Tom Brady, who did it 5 times, Drew Brees, who did it 4 times, and Peyton Manning, who did it 4 times, as the only 4 quarterbacks in NFL history to have at least 4 seasons of at least 35 or more touchdown passes and more than 4,500 passing yards. Again, these are career numbers, not succession, not consecutive season, not all of that. Only 4 quarterbacks in NFL history have had at least 4 seasons of 35 touchdown passes and 4,500 passing yards. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. It's not bad company to have. Tom Brady is like 45 years old. Patrick Mahomes is 27. He has 18 more seasons to do it at least 2 more times to have the most 35 touchdown passes and 4,500 yard passing seasons. I like his chances. So when we talk about pacing, we talk about best start in NFL history for a quarterback. You think about how many years Peyton Manning played, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Those guys played well into their late 30s, early 40s. Patrick Mahomes is 27 years old and he's already at those paces. That's a combination of what Patrick Mahomes has done, what the coaching staff around him done. Obviously, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, all of that is just that synergy of all these people coming together has led to nuggets like this being repeated like 7 times on podcasts and YouTube shows because of how crazy it is. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes is tied with Brees and Manning, only trailing Tom Brady. He just has to do it for one more season. Basically, Patrick Mahomes is going to own a lot of these records before he turns 30 years old, which is also crazy. All right, number 8. Mahomes stretches for 6. Following Juan Thornhill's interception in the fourth quarter of Saturday's game, Mahomes led the Chiefs offense down the field on a 5-play drive from their own 20-yard line and capped the series with 6 points by stretching to tap the pylon on a 3-yard rush. Everybody listening knows that play. You've seen the still shots most likely on social media. It was his MVP moment for anybody that thought that it was still a race. I know there's a lot of people making a lot of strange cases at this point for guys who have had, don't get me wrong, phenomenal seasons. Guys like Justin Jefferson, unbelievable season, as valuable to his team as anybody that's on, teams that are going into the playoffs and all of that. But there is no doubt that the best player in football, the most valuable player to his team is Patrick Mahomes. Let's not overthink this when we talk about he's leading in almost every passing category there is in the NFL. And again, when we add context for what Justin Jefferson is doing because of his quarterback, you're going to add context like that. You got to add context to what people thought Patrick Mahomes' season was going to be this year. Not they thought it was going to be bad, but they didn't think he was going to be leading the league in all these categories. So it was, that MVP moment is still shot. Somebody, but I think it was actually KC Sports Network on Twitter. I think it was Tucker, said that, they should make that the NFL logo going forward. Not going to do that, but definitely going to be a picture and a moment that we all remember from that game. And it was Mahomes' 12th career rushing touchdown, extending his franchise record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. And it was his 4th rushing score of the season, which is a single season career high and ties for the 2nd most rushing TDs by a quarterback in franchise history, only trailing, I believe, Alex Smith. And he needs 2 more to surpass that. And he's got 2 games left to do it. All right, moving on to number 9. And that concludes our Patrick Mahomes section of this show. And now we get into the Travis Kelce section of this show, which is, again, consistent every single week. And that with his 6 catches for 113 yards in Saturday's game against the Seahawks, Travis Kelce added to his Hall of Fame resume by crossing the 800 catch plateau. His 801 career catches already rank as the 2nd most in team history by any pass catcher, behind only Pro Football Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez's 916 receptions. And despite missing 15 games in his rookie season back in 2013, Travis Kelce joins Jason Witten with 806 as the only 2 tight ends in NFL history to record at least 800 receptions in their first 10 seasons in the NFL. And Kelce can pass Witten for the most receptions by a tight end in their first 10 seasons, with 6 receptions over the next 2 weeks. So, barring anything crazy happening based on the schedule, I don't think there's going to be an opportunity the Chiefs could rest their starters without risking giving up the number 1 seed. Even if Buffalo loses next week, the Chiefs would control it, but then they would still have to win the following week. So if they lost and then Buffalo win, they'd still have a tie record and they would be giving up home field advantage. So I only say that could have been a scenario based on how things played out over the last few weeks, that maybe Travis Kelce wouldn't have played, but now he's definitely going to play and stays healthy. 6 receptions over the next 2 weeks. I like his chances again of having the most receptions by a tight end in their first 10 seasons in NFL history. Kelce became the 5th tight end in NFL history to reach 800 career receptions, joining Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, and Shannon Sharp. Kelce needs 15 more receptions to pass Sharp for 4th place on the all-time tight end receptions list. That one, right on the border, I think. 15 receptions over the next 2 weeks. It's about what he's averaging. Wouldn't be surprised if he ended right on that, right above it, right below it, barring how teams play and how many receptions he gets. Seems like he's always going to get a ton of attention. It doesn't really matter. But 15 receptions, he will move into 4th place all time, then only trailing Antonio Gates. It's going to take a while to get him at least another good season, as Antonio Gates has 955 career receptions in his 16 years playing in the league, and Travis Kelce is on his 10th. So like his chances. Again, Travis Kelce wants to play as long as Tony G, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, he's going to break all these records. And Kelce reached the 800 catch mark, is probably the coolest one. Kelsey reached the 800 catch mark quicker than any other tight end in NFL history, taking just 142 career games to do that, besting the previous mark of 159 games. Again, a difference of 17 games that he beat that mark of 800 career receptions, and that was set by Jason Witten. His 142 games to 800 career receptions ties him with wide receiver Torrey Holt as the 7th quickest pass catcher of any position to reach the 800 catch plateaus. Are all receivers who are above him. I'm going to name them real quick. And again, this is talking about a tight end and comparing him to wide receiver reception records. Again, tied with Torrey Holt. The guys above him in the fewest to 800 career receptions: Brandon Marshall, DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson, Marvin Harrison, Julio Jones, and Antonio Brown. Start talking in terms of where he ranks among pass catchers, and he's separating himself from tight ends. Just goes to show he's the best to ever do it. Number 10, also Travis Kelce. This was his 2nd straight 100-yard receiving game and his 6th of the season. His 600-yard performances in 2022 are tied for the most such performances in a single season in franchise history. This marks Kelce's 3rd career season with 600-yard performances, the most such seasons by any player in franchise history. Kelce now owns 35 career 100-yard receiving games, the most in franchise history and the most by a tight end in NFL history. Again, his 35 career 100-yard games is the most in NFL history by a tight end. Most games of 100 more receiving yards in a season in Chiefs history. Kelce is tied with himself 2 other times and a number of other people. If he can get another 100-yard performance over the next 2 weeks, he'll have 7 or 8, which would be the most 100-yard games in franchise history, and that's tight end or wide receiver. All right, that concludes our Travis Kelce section of this show, which between Kelce and Mahomes always takes up about 60-70% of this show each week. All right, number 11, Kadarius Toney taken in for 6. All right, Kadarius Toney was on the receiving end of an 8-yard touchdown pass, a little shovel pass that Patrick Mahomes in the game's first quarter on Saturday. Toney now has 2 receiving touchdowns for his career, both since joining the Chiefs in a trade with the New York Giants this season, going to go down as one of the brilliant moves of Brett Veach that really put this offense in position to threaten in so many different ways as they go into the playoffs and extending beyond this year. I think we've talked about it a lot, but just to remind people, beyond this season, the only wide receivers that were under contract for the Chiefs were Sky Moore and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That was it, because Juju's a free agent, Justin Watson's a free agent, McCole Hardman's a free agent, all those guys. I know there's guys like Justin Ross that a lot of people are excited about, but for guys who are contributing that are out on this roster right now, that's it. And I fully expect him to try to make a move or try to extend Juju Smith-Schuster at some point because of how valuable he's shown to be in this offense. And he's kind of having a resurgence for his career. He's closing in on 1,000 yards for his season. But Kadarius Toney, what he's able to do, the skill set that he offers, just an absolute brilliant trade by Brett Veach. And we're starting to see that play itself out now that Kadarius Toney's back in there. And I said last week on Outside the Trenches, my Christmas present, if I could pick anything for the Chiefs, was a healthy Kadarius Toney throughout the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs, because it opens up so much more of the playbook, especially in same thing with McCole Hardman, getting him back into the mix. So much more of the jet sweep, the ghost action, those different things in motion that Andy Reid loves to do. That part of his playbook is either it's used so much more, or it's so much more dynamic when you've got guys that have the skill set of Kadarius Toney or McCole Hardman. But in addition to the touchdown reception for 8 yards, Toney had 2 punt returns for 18 yards. Again, low key, but really solidifying that position, as we saw Sky Moore early in the year really struggle as a punt returner. So it sounds like you're just kind of that I'm just kind of glossing over that, but shouldn't gloss over things like extra points that we've talked about ad nauseum for the past week, and that whole battery between Winchester, Tommy Townsend, and Harrison Butker. Don't want to take that for granted, just like we don't want to take catching a punt for granted, let alone getting 18 yards on his 2 punt returns. All right, number 12. Again, appreciate everybody hanging with me. Sorry, I'm trying to do the best I can to get through. This is the most I've talked in like a week. All right. Jerick McKinnon struts for 6. In Saturday's 24-10 victory, Jerick McKinnon scored on a 9-yard pass from Patrick Mahomes. It marks McKinnon's 6th total touchdown, 5 receiving, 1 rushing over the past 4 weeks. This was his 4th straight game with a receiving touchdown, which is tied for the longest streak by a running back since 1970, according to ESPN Stats and Info. Weeks 1 to 4 of McKinnon's 2020 campaign in San Francisco was the last time he scored at least one touchdown of any kind in 4 consecutive weeks. And according to ESPN Stats and Info, McKinnon's 5 receiving touchdowns in the month of December are the most in a calendar month by any running back since Chiefs running back Jamal Charles accomplished that feat in December of 2013, probably because he caught 5 touchdowns against the Raiders. But McKinnon finished the day with 3 receptions for 31 yards and the receiving score, as well as 5 carries for 7 yards. I don't think there's been a bigger impact player for the Chiefs over the last 3 weeks than Jerick McKinnon. Not a bold take or a hot take there, but I think we're seeing the value that Jerick McKinnon brought. And we saw in the playoffs last year, provided the spark for the Chiefs. But again, to go back, if Jerick McKinnon can get a receiving touchdown against the Broncos this Sunday, he'll have the NFL record, at least going back to 1970, for the most consecutive weeks with a touchdown reception by a running back. I know that's really get into the stats, but pretty cool, and another notch on the belt for Andy Reid in the way that he likes to utilize his guys. All right, moving on to number 13. We've got 3 more. Everybody, appreciate you for hanging out, for those who are still hanging out with us. All right, George Karlaftis bats down another pass. This is a pretty cool nugget. Rookie defensive end and first-round pick George Karlaftis recorded his 7th pass defense of the season in Saturday's win over the Seahawks. The deflection came in the first quarter, and it was knocking down a Seahawks. It was Geno Smith pass intended for Laquan Treadwell. It was Karlaftis' 7th pass defense this season, which ties him for 3rd among all defensive linemen this season, and ties him for 1st among rookie defensive linemen with the 49ers defensive end Drake Jackson. Again, George Karlaftis, if you look at pressures, I believe he's 2nd in the NFL on pressures, trailing only Aiden Hutchinson, and same thing with, I think we're going to get to that here in a second, but same thing in terms of sacks. But the pass defense has stood out, and obviously being 3rd in the NFL and tied for 1st among rookies is a huge impact that George Karlaftis has made for the defense. And I know that Joe Cullen, Chiefs defensive line coach, and Steve Spagnuolo has talked about how much they've put George Karlaftis out on the field compared to a lot of other rookies in this position, especially for a team as good as the Chiefs. To put him out there and not have a drop off, not feel like you have to kind of wane through some of the rookie mistakes and those kinds of things. He's really been an impact player from the time that he first went out there. Hadn't got the sacks that I had projected that everybody reminds me about, thing I thought he would threaten Derek Thomas's rookie sack record with 10.5. He's got 4.5 right now, so he only needs he's got 5.5 now, so he only needs to get 2.5 per game over the next 2 weeks. Who knows? He could at least threaten it going into that last week. But he also had a second quarter sack of Geno Smith, giving him 4.5 quarterback takedowns in his rookie year. 4.5. And his 4.5 sack ranks as 3rd most by a rookie this season, trailing only, 3rd since James Houston. Yeah, the other Detroit Lions rookie now has 5 sacks. So Aiden Hutchinson with 7, James Houston with 5. Are the only 2 guys that George Karlaftis trails. In that game on Saturday, Karlaftis also tallied 1 solo tackle for loss, 1 quarterback pressure to go along with the sack of 9 yards and that pass defense. So George Karlaftis continuing to make an impact. All right, number 14, Juan Thornhill picks off Geno Smith with under 10 minutes left in the game. Really kind of sealed the deal. Thornhill recorded his 2nd interception of the season, picking off Geno Smith in a pass in the end zone to set up a Kansas City 4th quarter touchdown drive. Thornhill finished the game with 5 tackles, 4 of which were solo, 1 interception, and 1 pass defense. And Thornhill now owns 7 career interceptions. All right. Number 15, last but certainly not least, and this is one that we've been talking about over the past few weeks. For the 8th time this season on Saturday, linebacker Nick Bolton led the team in tackles, recording a single game career high 17 tackles, 8 of which were solo. With his 10 plus tackles against the Seahawks, Bolton moved into the top spot for the most 10 plus tackle games in a single season in franchise history, dating back to 1994. He passed the previous mark of 7 such performances by linebacker Donnie Edwards back in 2000, combined with his 3 10-plus tackle performances as a rookie in 2021 last year. Bolton now owns 11 career games with 10 or more tackles, moving into sole possession for 3rd most 10-plus tackle performances in a career in franchise history dating back. That's what he's written. in a career in franchise history dating back to 1994. I know the franchise goes back much further than that, but a lot of these stats weren't kept the same way that they are now. But again, Nick Bolton, most 10 or more tackle games in a season in franchise history. And looking at career 10 plus tackle games, Derek Johnson, not a huge surprise, leads the franchise with 24 of those games. Well, if he already has 11 and he's only not even his full way through his second season, I like the chance of Nick Bolton staying healthy and having the most 10 plus tackle games in franchise history, probably before the end of his rookie year or that fifth year they give him an extension, whatever it is. He's going to own that record. He is a tackling machine, that Nick Bolton is, and should have been a Pro Bowler based on some of the numbers he's putting up. And as somebody who personally made a bet on DraftKings, our friends, that Nick Bolton would lead the NFL in tackles this year, I really hope that he gets there. I think he's third in the NFL right now, trailing a couple guys. I think he's 8 tackles behind the pace of guy for the Jaguars that's leading the NFL in tackles. So it needs another 17 tackle performance to get there. It's not without question, but it's going to take a couple of really big performances. But shout out to all those guys. That's a lot of stats. And shout out to everybody that bared with me through all of this. I'm kind of losing my voice right now. It's, again, first day I've kind of been upright. So I hope you all had a phenomenal Christmas and or holiday break. Christmas is not your thing, but we appreciate you for spending part of your day with us here. Yeah, enjoy your time with family. We'll have more content, more stuff for you here at KC Sports Network. If you listen to this on Monday, make sure you catch the live edition of the KC Laboratory tonight at 8 p.m. on the Chiefs YouTube channel. And we'll have plenty more content throughout the week getting you ready for that game against the Broncos and their new interim head coach, as Nathaniel Hackett was fired and let go earlier today. Not working out between Russell Wilson and all the decisions that the Broncos made, but they're kind of stuck with Russell Wilson for a while unless they do something completely crazy and eat like $107 million in dead cap by releasing him, which would be unfounded in the NFL, or would never have happened in the NFL. Don't expect that to happen, but sometimes you just got to cut your losses, and their idea of making things better is getting rid of Nathaniel Hackett right now, as we saw fights breaking out on the sideline between teammates and all kinds. It's just a mess over there in Denver. So they didn't feel bad for us when things weren't going on in Kansas City, so we're not going to feel bad for them. But the Chiefs do take them on Sunday. It'd be really hard pressed to believe that Broncos are going to be able to completely turn their season around and threaten the Chiefs on Sunday. Still want the Chiefs to go out and play well. You want to be playing your best football at the end of the season. But again, thanks everybody for hanging out and listening to this episode of 10 Things. Again, if you're in the baseball, softball training, or you know somebody who needs some training, call my friend John Renzi. Go up there, take a tour, see what they offer, and see if it's not a great fit for you. I've known John for a long time, and they do fantastic work. I've spent some time with those guys. They do fantastic work for baseball and softball players in the Kansas City area. But thanks to everybody for hanging out. We'll see you next time.